Thank you very much for joining us on the Voice of Job Seekers. This is Mark, of course. And I've been doing this series from the National Career Development Association and here in San Diego, talking to an associate director of career services, James Miller, St. Xavier University, who's also my friend that I've known for several years, that I met at a job workshop that I did for organization. So, James, how you doing?
Doing great.
Good
Happy to be in San Diego. It's beautiful.
Good deal. Just my friend Brad Mitten that you heard a little while ago is also a Gen Z whisperer, work with a whole bunch of students, gets confessions sometimes,
Yes.
walks around with a priest collar and veil around him when he goes on campus, that kind of thing. I want to pick his brain while we're here together. And you'll probably hear more from him because we live in the same city and we hang out sometimes. You'll hear more from him in the future. But right now, I just want to it's the end of the school year. You just ended it like about a month ago, right? So it's fresh on your mind about some of the things that you've experienced with students and helping them with their careers, helping them with life even.
Yep.
So maybe there might be an idea of what's trending upward as far as, or what's the concern that a lot of them might have in this day and age.
Sure. If I'm going to address that question, I'd say I've been in higher ed for about 4 years as far as being a higher ed professional. Most of that,
Okay.
I was managing 50, 20-year-olds, which is exciting and fun.
Right.
And sometimes herding cats, but really I'm a huge fan of their generation. I think they bring a ton of potential to the market. I'm a big racing fan, Formula One racing fan. I refer to a lot of things in those analogies, but I always say about Gen Z in particular that we built them for speed. They have been built and raised in an environment entirely focused on speed and efficacy. How fast and how economically and how smart can you do something?
Mm-hmm.
As a millennial, I'm the first millennial. I'm one of the originals. Millennials have long held a belief that if something isn't working right, it's broken and either needs to be discarded or replaced. And so my generation, you don't find broken toasters in our houses. You don't find broken coffee makers in our houses. You don't find something with 3 wheels. You find something that either works or doesn't, and we replace it. And Gen Z has been raised in that environment, especially through YouTube and places like that, where I would say boomers were raised on television. Gen Z has been raised on YouTube, and they watch it differently than we do. They absorb it differently than we do. But the reality of them is that they are not built for resiliency. They're not built to climb a 7% incline over a rock face, and they're not Land Rovers.
Right.
They're Formula One cars, and they can go at 4 times the speed, but a pebble can flip them because little things that happen in their lives, if they're unexpected or unpredictable, can really mess with them because they weren't built for weathering hard things. Now, it doesn't make them weak. It doesn't make them stupid. It means that we've told them to value things differently than what we did. They are expecting a path to be straight. And what's really fun about them is when they encounter injustice, they are intolerant of it. They are absolutely not okay with something not being right or just. They will fight you. They will protest. They will do all of those things to say, this road is not straight. This road has too many pebbles. How can I possibly move fast on this road when it hasn't been made good? And that's a great thing, but they don't always have the solutions because they're young and they don't always have constructive feedback on how to make it right. So it's like on us to interact with them in that way. So as I've been working with young people, I work on building resiliency by dispelling some of the fear around failure. If they're not, I'm just to say, if they're not good enough to have their own channel, sometimes they won't endeavor something because
Right.
they don't want to fail at it. They don't want to do it wrong. And so when I managed that large group of them, I used to say, if you don't make a mistake in your first couple weeks, I might have to fire you.
Mm.
I don't really want to hear your good things. If you come and tell me your wins, that's fine. I'll celebrate them with you, but I really want to hear your mistakes. I want to hear what you did wrong, what you've learned from it. And they would come in the first or second time, they'd tell me teary-eyed what they did wrong and that sort of thing. And then by the third one, they were proud of it. They would tell me what they learned, what they were going to do better. They were advocates for themselves. And once that fear was removed, they could move fast again. And that was really valuable.
That's interesting. I have a friend that played professional basketball.
Yeah.
And she talks about the failure quotient.
Sure.
Which is a really different way I just never imagined. But I think you described it.
Yeah.
Is that you instill the value of failure instead of putting the burden of always correcting failure. Now you got to find a solution, which that's important.
Failure doesn't always need to be corrected. Deion Sanders was asked if football, Deion was asked if football or baseball was harder. Which one's harder as a sport? He played both professionally.
Right.
And Deion said that baseball is infinitely harder than football because what other sport could you fail 70 to 80% of the time and be considered a professional? Baseball players fail constantly. They strike out constantly. They hit the ball to the pitcher constantly. They get caught out. And in football, it simply wouldn't be tolerated at that level. If you drop the ball 3 or 4 times in a row, you're now on the bench and somebody else is out there.
Right.
Football is a sport of efficacy, and baseball is a sport of very small ball coming at you very quickly, and failure is just part of the game.
And I never heard that before from Deion Sanders. You're just a whole
he's an authority.
I'm overwhelmed right now.
Yeah. I love,
but it
I
makes
love
sense though, because in baseball, you just have to be professional. You just got to have a hit like 25% of the time.
Yeah.
To be considered, oh, he's okay. He's still a professional.
Sure.
But if you got above 25%, you're doing even better.
Agreed.
But can you imagine if you were doing 33% of the time? Then you're exceptional.
Exactly. You're a Hall of Famer.
Right.
Yeah.
If you do it for 10 years straight, you're a Hall of Famer.
Yeah, absolutely.
And that's true. But life is I can understand that. We don't have to overthink it and be even 25% right.
Yeah, depends on your field. I mean, like, obviously it's for accountants than there are for, or differences for nurses than there are for other things.
Yeah, you want your tax guy to do 100%.
You sure do. And really, we all want to strive for excellence in what we do, but excellence looks different in different ways. If you're talking to sales professionals, I was brought up in a sales environment by a guy who had learned on the streets of Chicago working for the Democratic National Party in the 1950s and 60s. And he would go knocking on people's doors, and that was where his sales acumen came from, was in canvassing. And he was always told that a sales interaction is like a tree, and it's not always going to have apples on it, and those apples are not always going to be ripe. It's about being there when the apples are ripe. And that means consistently coming back to it. Right. You could look at sales as a constant stream of failures that lead up to a successful interaction. Unless you are lucky enough to walk up to an apple tree in season when the apples are ready to fall, you're all about building those relationships and failing to meet the customer's needs until they're ready to help. Like those types of things with career, I think our students need to understand that. Plus, let's say that you have a student that is so focused and so on top of it that they ace everything that they need to get into the field that they want to get into, only to find out 5 years from now that field doesn't exist anymore, that job doesn't matter anymore.
That happens a lot.
That the world changes. We're talking about building soft skills, building adjustable thoughts, and the ways to work with the world so that as the world changes, they can change. There's going to be jobs 5 years from now that don't exist now. On the positive side.
Yeah, and that's true. And I was talking with someone on LinkedIn, I think it was today or yesterday, and the point being is that when you're telling people about what you do, if you tell someone that you worked in management information systems today,
What does that even mean?
they'll go, what is that?
Yeah, I don't even know if I know.
And the recruiter is searching for someone with your skill set, won't know what that is,
Sure.
or won't find you because managed information system died 25 years ago.
Yeah, sure.
But having said that, though, if you use something that's more modern,
Yeah.
if you just use information systems and what it's related to in what area, then you'll have more chance to be found.
Absolutely.
So it has to be relevant and not just relative.
Absolutely. Yeah, no, I agree with you. And I think that a lot of the jobs that we have now that I think are the most valuable jobs in the whole industry are diversity, equity, and inclusion jobs. Did not exist in that way.
Nope.
There might have been some person with a bit of a bent in the human resources department who would have cared about those things, but it wasn't certainly a job that you could list as your resume and go out there and seek that type of work. And those professionals are finding huge leadership positions and becoming leaders in their industry, leaders in their workplace. And I love that.
Yeah, so do I. You just said a mouthful. I'm probably going to have to listen back to this, so when I have you back on, we could dive deeper into this.
Yeah.
But one of the things you did mention is, again, the whole idea that the value of failure is not to be underwritten or undervalued.
No.
It has to be something that you're facing enough of for you to grow on. Because without failure, growth is stifled.
Without failure, experience is impossible.
Yep.
No one, I always say experience is just awful things happening to you because no experience you've ever had has been positive in the moment. It's almost impossible to learn from a completely smooth experience. It just isn't. And experience is just how you deal with ambiguity and how you deal with hardship and how you deal with friction and what you learn from it. And so building that in and expecting that is something that race cars can handle. Race car does not mean weak. Speed does not mean weak. Right. Lack of resiliency doesn't mean weak. But if you're going to be fast, you can't be stupid.
Right.
You can't run through the rocks. You can't do other things. You have to be quick on your feet. You have to be adjustable. You have to be flexible. And if we can build those tools in, some young people may just need to slow down. That may just be the thing. Right. Like basketball analogy, slow down to speed up, right? Like people have said that for years. When you start missing baskets like crazy, you need to slow down to speed up. Right. And I think sometimes young people need to slow down in order to find a field that's a little bit more forgiving for where they're at. Other ones that want to keep operating at that crazy pace, they're just going to have to understand that it's going to require a lot of focus.
Require focus and understand eventually you'll just hit a wall faster.
Possibly. The failures can feel bigger. The failures can be bigger.
Right.
But that's true of any job. As we move up the ladder, as you move up the ladder of responsibility, your failures matter more. And the effects of those failures can affect other people's lives. And your company can fail because of a decision you made or things like that. And that's where the big bucks come from, is in that.
Yeah, making your failures count.
Yeah, it's true. And learning from them.
This year, what are you hopeful about?
What do I hope for? Our hardships this year have been around, specifically at the university I work at, we're heavy focus on Latinx students. We're a Hispanic serving institution. A lot of our students are using FAFSA, and the adjustments to the FAFSA have been insane this year. Complete overhaul of what they call the new FAFSA and how that applies to students. A lot of families with undocumented parents and things like that have struggled because the way that the website was set up, it made it almost impossible for you to get through the FAFSA unless you had both of your parents' social security numbers. They've fixed that, but the fix is still complicated. And so for a lot of students in our area, that's been a real challenge for them to find that ability to get to school. Thankfully, we've been aggressive and we've been able to offset the losses that we might have suffered from it. We're just so happy to get a whole new bunch of students that are coming in, and we're going to continue to work with them. I'm excited for this batch. I think they're going to be great.
Good deal. So if people can get a hold of you, they want to talk more with you about what you do, they can contact you on LinkedIn, right?
Yeah, LinkedIn is probably the best way. JT Miller SXU, I think, is my LinkedIn ID.
Okay.
But yeah, James Miller's a pretty common name. But they can find me. I work at St. Xavier University.
He's got the T in the middle.
Yeah, I guess that's true. Yeah.
Thanks a lot, and thank the rest of you guys for listening. Of course, I'll be back next time with someone else from the NCDA conference here. But I just want to assure you that you're hearing some of what the latest practices are, and that perhaps you can find people that will help you, that will embrace those. Again, thanks, and peace in the Valley of Love.